Welcome, everyone, to our regular weekday morning podcast on Kabbalah for Heretics with me, your heretic-in-chief, Yakov Leib, HaKohain. We have, for the past more than 25 years, every weekday morning at this time, been going through the Zohar, volume by volume, cover to cover, page by page, sentence by sentence. And we have completed volumes 1, 2, and 3 during this almost 30 years, and are now well into finishing volume 4. When God grant us the life we finish that, we will go into the last and final volume of the Zohar, volume 5. The Zohar has been discussing at great length the function and importance of the Kohen, the hereditary Levitical priest in Israel. As I point out every time I talk about the Kohen, it is a totally genetic office. It is totally passed on from father to son, if one is in that lineage. It's not the kind of priesthood that one goes to seminary for, or that one decides one is. And it is only through the male. The interesting thing is, and genetically this is true, the identity as a Jew is passed on by the feminine DNA. But the presence of being a Kohen, if one is passed on by the male DNA. So only males in the lineage of the Kohanim, directly from Aaron and Moses, are Kohanim, priests, Levitical priests of the temple, and have been for 4,000 years. I am, among others, not many, but there are other Kohanim. I am in that lineage. I can, and indeed have, traced my lineage now genetically, directly back to Aaron. You know, and there are those who brag about being descended from the members of the Mayflower. Well, that's all very nice and very good, but I trace my lineage directly from the first high priest, Aaron, brother of Moses, genetically. Now that line can be broken. That's why very careful attention is paid by those in it to not breaking it. And even if one breaks it, all that means is that his descendants will not be Kohanim, but he remains one, whether he breaks the lineage or not, because it is genetic. So we've left off in the Zohar with a very, very deep discussion of the mystical, magical functions of this high priest, of this Kohen. Again, purely by accident of birth, I am one. I am not a Kohen because I am pious or holy or scriptural or anything. I am an asshole, just like all of you listening. But because I am born into a family of Kohanim, I am a Kohen. And indeed, in many ways, I am, as are most Kohanim, typical. I think in the last podcast I mentioned an old Jewish proverb that says, all Kohanim are crazy. And that indeed is true. for the most part. We are not like other people. Even if we don't know we're Kohanim. My father told me that we were Kohanim when I was just shy of 10 years old. And I remember even then not really understanding fully what it meant. I was, in a way, overwhelmed by it. And I felt and understood the importance of it. So now let's get back to where we left off in the Zohar, in its discussion of the Kohen. Now, on all solemn occasions, some act must be manifested, and therefore a ceremony was performed with Aaron below to produce a corresponding reaction above. And in this way, worlds were blessed through the meditation of the Kohen, the priest. Listen to what that is saying. The Kohen is indeed a priest, but also a magician. Also a magician. He, in fact, can and does perform rituals below that have a direct effect on that which is above, which is God. Therefore, as it says, on all solemn occasions, some act must be manifested. From the beginning, that has been true. And on all solemn occasions, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and so forth, the Kohanim of the congregation come together in front of the congregation to perform this powerful, powerful ritual below in order to effect that which is above. And it's visible for all those in attendance to witness and see and participate in. It is, if any of you have ever witnessed it, in an Orthodox congregation. I'm not talking about a New Age congregation. If any of you have witnessed a truly traditional dukening, which is what this ritual is called, among the Kohanim, you know what I'm talking about. It's not something you'll easily forget. And as I said before, children who are attending the services are encouraged by their parents to turn their back or close their eyes so as not to see what is being done by the Kohanim, because it is powerful and frightening. Believe me, it is frightening. Now, on all solemn occasions, some act must be manifested. To this day, on all solemn occasions, that act is manifested by the Kohanim. There can be 1 or 20 or how many ever in any one congregation. They perform this ancient 4,000-year-old ritual begun by Aaron. And it is done below to produce a corresponding action above. That is, it is a theurgic ritual. It is not religious. It's theurgy, magic with a K, doing something down below in order to affect something above. It's not just honoring what is above. It's not just noticing what is above. The ritual is performed to affect, alter, and change what is above, but only by the Kohen, only the descendants of Aaron, the direct lineal genetic descendants of Aaron. To produce a corresponding reaction above. And in this way, worlds are blessed through the meditation of the priest. Worlds are blessed, not just the congregation standing there, but worlds by the meditation of the priest, not the congregation. It is a tremendous responsibility to be a Kohen. And generally, as in my case, a young man, a young boy begins training for it at a very young age. I remember when my father told me that we were, and my father held no great respect for it. My father was a rather typical socialist Jew at the time. I began practicing the very complicated hand gesture that the Kohanim make. My father showed it to me, I think just once, and I immediately understood what it was, and I would go walking to school at that young age, practicing that hand gesture. It's said only a Kohen can make it, because it's complicated, it's difficult to make with one's hands. Aaron, it goes on in the Zohar, had to bring a calf for a sin offering on account of the sin he had previously committed. The Kohen, when he performs this magical ritual called dukening, must atone for his own sins. As I tell you, the Kohen is not sinless. The Kohen is not some holy, pious individual. He's not a person that walks 10 feet above the ground. The only way to recognize him in regular life, at least according to the Jewish proverb, is that he is in all probability crazy. But other than that, he does not look differently from others or otherwise act differently. It is purely a matter of genetics, whether one, always a male, only a male, is born a Kohen or not. And the only way he is born a Kohen is if his father was born a Kohen from his father, the Kohen, who was a Kohen because his father was a Kohen. So here, you'll notice that even the high priest and the priests had sins. Aaron had to make up for the sin of the golden calf before he could perform this ancient ritual. Also, it says, there was, in addition to the calf that was sacrificed, there was a ram sacrificed by the Kohen at this special ritual. The ram was sacrificed in completion of the ram that was found in the bushes by Abraham as he was about to sacrifice his son Isaac. And he took that ram and sacrificed it as a substitution for his son Isaac. That ram is the Messiah. That ram is the messianic sacrifice of the Messiah. The man Jesus, who was not God, but a great adept, knew all this and did everything he had to do to fulfill the requirements of the Messiah, including being sacrificed as the ram. Not the lamb, but the ram. Also, the shofar, the ram's horn that is sounded during these rituals, comes from the ram and the horn of the ram that Abraham found in the thickets surrounding him and his son Isaac. as he was about to plunge the knife into Isaac. The ram represents the substitution for mankind's sins. The ram is sacrificed instead of and on behalf of mankind, Isaac. And we see that in the actual crucifixion of Yeshua bar Miriam. Again, I need to point out, that does not suggest in any way that Jesus was God or a supernatural being. It does not. It only tells us that this man, who was a great adept and himself a magician, went through all the known steps of effecting the Messiah predicted in the oral Torah, such as here in the Zohar, even if it meant his own death. Thus, we do not worship that man Jesus for having done what he did. We benefit from it, hopefully. He becomes the intercessor, like Moses, between mankind and God. The intercessor, not God itself, interceding on behalf of man's sins with God, so that God will be compassionate and forgiving and not angry and punitive. Thus the calf was brought for its own sake, and the ram to complete it duly with the perfection of Isaac, to complete the creation of the world by God, because it was not completed by God. Because, as the Baal Shem Tov tells us, 18th century, God fell into disunity by the act of creation. And man, through the priest, the Kohen, joins the two parts of God back together again. Through this ritual, particularly. There are other ways of doing it, for which you don't have to be a Kohen. But in this ritual, that is what the Kohen is doing. Thus the calf was brought for its own sake, and the ram to complete it duly with the perfection of Isaac. Israel, who shared the sin of the priest, had to bring a similar offering. That is, quote, an ox and a ram for peace offerings to sacrifice before the Lord, unquote. An ox for their sin and a ram to keep this place with the perfection of Isaac. The sacrifice of the man Jesus on the cross was such a sacrifice, meant to complete and rejoin and reunify God. The prophet says, on that day, the Lord shall be one, and his name shall be one. The power of this ritual, which is incidentally performed daily in the land of Israel, but only on important occasions outside of Israel. That ritual is supreme. And I am blessed by God, for no particular reason of my own, to have participated many times in that dukening, in that ritual, with my fellow Kohanim, to be the priests who bring down blessings on the world and who reunite God. reason I'm talking about all this at this length is because it's right here in the Zohar. But also, listen to me, if you ever have a chance to attend such a ritual in an Orthodox, traditional Jewish synagogue, do it. Don't miss the chance. Do it. You'll see why I'm insisting upon it. Don't go to a New Age synagogue or a modern Jewish synagogue. That is not the authentic thing. In the Orthodox, traditional synagogue, the ones that most Jews don't like, it is done as exactly as it can be done in the way it was done by Aaron. Passed down from generation to generation. If you want to experience a powerful theurgic experience, go to the synagogue on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, or so forth, and observe the Kohanim performing this ritual of the dukening. We'll continue with this tomorrow morning. Now you might ask yourself, what the hell importance is this? How is this important? Why talk about it so much? Well, first of all, as I said, I talk about it this much because it's being spoken of this much in the Zohar. And it's important to talk about it so you understand it, because it is still being performed. You may not see it. You may not attend a synagogue or where it's being done. And certainly it cannot be done in a Christian church or a Muslim mosque or anything else. It must be done by a hereditary Kohen in the traditional Orthodox manner. It is, after all, a full magical ritual. It's being done. This last Passover, it was done. This impressive, holy, transformative experience. The other reason I, in particular, stress it, is that one can participate in this act of theurgy virtually, so that I'm kind of walking back from what I've been saying. You can literally, virtually experience that dukening, experience that ritual virtually in the mind's eye, where all things can be done again. I hope you understand. So that once having experienced it or having it described to you, as I've been doing, you can in fact literally go through it again by closing your eyes and visioning it in the heart-mind. Now, this day, even this morning. That concludes our podcast for this morning. And as I do at the conclusion of every podcast, I'm going to recite the ritual prayer for the dead. This is not the dukening. This is just the ritual prayer for the dead, recited in honor of my beloved friend and fellow Kohen, Leonard Cohen. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shmei rabo, bo mo divrei chirusei v'yamlich malchusei, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beis Yisrael, b'agalo uvizman kori v'mu amen. Yehei shmei rabo mevarach le'olamo me'omaya, yisbarach v'yistabach v'yispa'ar v'yisomam, v'yisnasei v'yisadar v'yisalei v'yisalal, shmei d'kutra b'richu, le'olam mincha b'rachasa v'shirasa, Tishvachasa v'nechemasa. Damiron bo v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya. V'chainu aleinu v'yalkal Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom v'imhamov. Hu ya'asei shalom. Aleinu v'yalkal Yisrael v'imru amen. And let everybody say amen. That concludes this morning's podcast. By the grace of God, if He gives me another day of life tomorrow, we'll continue. In the meantime, Yivarechecha Adonai